Thank you for joining us and welcome to this webinar. My name is Phil Von Hake. I help a lot with CDOT's non-attainment area air pollution mitigation enterprise, which from this moment forward will be called NAAPME. And we're here to talk about our funding opportunity, the Community Clean Transportation Assistance Program, or CCTAP. And if anyone does not see me changing from the title slide to the first slide about NAAPME, please let me know. Otherwise, I will continue. So NAAPME was created by Senate Bill 260 back in 2021, the big transportation bill that created this enterprise for the purpose of mitigating environmental and health impacts of increased air pollution from transportation, specifically motor vehicle emissions, in Colorado's non-attainment areas. Currently, the only non-attainment area in Colorado is on that map encircled in the dark blue border, which is the Denver Metro, North Front Range, and Upper Front Range areas. And the objective is obviously to reduce vehicle emissions. We place a big emphasis on supporting disproportionately impacted communities that we'll describe in more detail soon, and then provide transportation options. As far as this specific funding opportunity, CCTAP, it supports communities and other government entities in the non-attainment area with eligible projects that can provide demonstrated improvements to air quality. This list is a very brief sampling that includes transit, bike ped, transportation demand management, and other projects that align with NAAPME's 10-year plan. We'll put a lot of clickable links in the chat. Thanks in advance to Garrett or Darius or anyone who can do that. So there we go. So the NAAPME 10-year plan identified 3 primary funding focus areas. Projects to sustainably reduce traffic congestion, whether it's transit, mobility hubs, bike ped, car or van pools. Project reduce environmental and health impacts of transportation, whether that's through construction, roadside vegetation, things like that. Or projects that improve neighborhood connectivity for communities adjacent to highways. Again, sidewalks, bike ped, speed reduction, things like that. The Federal Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, or CMAQ, that figures large in the NAAPME program, and we'll cover that more in a few slides. As far as what's eligible for CCTAP, I'm not going to go through this one by one, but that list is here. It's in complete detail in the NOFO document in both English and Spanish. Darius, is there anything you want to highlight on this slide?
No, I think most areas that are able to receive CMAQ funds, so most local governments within the non-attainment area, and any metropolitan planning organizations or the state or other state entities are able to receive funding and are eligible.
Thanks. So as far as what we'll be looking for in applications, the two largest items are clear, or measurable emissions reductions as a result of that transportation project, and that the project is located in or supports a disproportionately impacted community. We define that in more detail in a few minutes. But also the ideas of meeting the NAAPME business purpose, the funding focus areas, that the project is prioritized in an approved transportation improvement plan. That could be the statewide plan, a regional plan, a 10-year plan, a TIP, things like that. We want to see demonstration of the likelihood of a successful project, including a commitment to long-term maintenance for infrastructure projects. We want to see a project improve traveling safety, especially for vulnerable road users, bike, ped, wheelchair. demonstrate improvement or expansion of transportation choice or neighborhood connectivity, and then the quality of the application. So for the timeline, we are currently coming to the end of the open period for questions. Thanks to those of you who have reached out directly, and we've had meetings with some of you about specific questions, which has helped us with creating our FAQs and things like that. If you have an infrastructure project and you want a review of that project before the official application deadline, we ask that you get those to us by 5 p.m. on February 25th. I believe that's next Tuesday or a week from Tuesday. And in March and April, we will make our technical review of those applications. I know of at least one applicant who has a non-infrastructure application that they want to submit for a review, and that's fine, but that's not as important as for the infrastructure projects. The actual deadline to submit final applications, all attachments, and a professional engineer review is 5 p.m. on April 30th. And then through May, the enterprise will evaluate those applications. The NAAPME Board of Directors usually meets the fourth Thursday of each month. And on that meeting in June, on June 26th, we will review and award projects. You can watch that meeting on YouTube. A link will be on the NAAPME website. And then by July 31st of this year, we will send award notices to the applicable parties. And as far as how we've been getting the word out about CCTAP, we launched the CCTAP website in November. We had a press release for the start of the grant. There will probably be another one, or at least an email blast by the close of the grant, or when we announce the awards, excuse me. We've already made presentations to Dr. Cog, North Front Range MPO, and the Upper Front Range TPR, and they have done a good job of telling their constituent agencies. We've sent email messages to potential communities throughout the non-attainment area. The notice of funding opportunity is available in both English and Spanish. We're doing this webinar. We have FAQs on our website. If Garrett could put a link to the FAQs in the chat, that would be great. And go ahead, Darius.
We had a question in chat. So would decarbonizing through EV fleet investment count, or will you be prioritizing the infrastructure projects? I think the appropriate answer to that is projects that can have a demonstrated impact to reducing ozone precursors and the development of ozone, or the reduction of greenhouse gas. As long as you're able to produce that for the projects, then all projects will be considered.
Thank you. And as far as funding for EV projects, NAAPME was one of 4 enterprises created by Senate Bill 260, and the other 3 enterprises, one at CDOT, one at the Colorado Energy Office, and one at the Colorado Department of Public Health Environment, do all fund different types of EV and charging projects. And we can get you links to those if you need those. So moving on, Darius, again, please pipe up whenever you like. We will award amounts between $500,000 and $17 million. That's the total. 17 million is the total amount available through this round of funding. It's conceivable that there's one project to rule them all, but chances are we'll be awarding somewhere between 1 and 34 projects, depending on the applications, what meets the criteria, and what meets the criteria the best. We may give partial awards. I think there is something in the application that says we are willing to accept a partial award if it doesn't have to be an all or nothing application. Darius, could you expand on allowable use of funds, please?
I think the allowable use of funds piece is what's in the appendices C, I believe, in regards to invoicing. There is information regarding that. Generally, you would want to use the funds for what is been approved in the application and what's allowable under statute. Substitutions are not usually being able to be done. If you're unable to use the funds for that project or the project is canceled, you would probably be required to end the grant agreement. But we can come if there is any issues, we can have contacts with the enterprise staff at a later date if you are able to receive an award.
Thank you. And that restriction at the bottom is somewhat self-explanatory, but if you could expand on that too.
Basically, I don't think this will be a concern for this round of funding, but generally you're not able to use NAAPME funds that were already awarded as a match for another NAAPME grant. Again, the enterprise has not awarded funds before, so I don't think we'll run into this situation this around, but that is the only restrictions in terms of match.
Thank you. So for awardees, we do expect quarterly progress reports on your project. Darius, could you expand on the next two bullets? The next three, actually?
I think the quarterly progress reports, when it comes to performance metrics, are we meeting the milestones that were outlined in the agreement and the award? Are we invoicing properly on a quarterly basis so projects do not become inactive or languishing? And from a performance metric standpoint, usually at the beginning when you submit your application for determining the kilograms per day of ozone precursors, that will be done up front, but usually it's been on in terms of moving the project along at a accurate rate, and we don't have lapses in billing. So hopefully that answers the question, but it is answered in more detail in the invoicing section, and we can talk more if there's questions with it.
Thank you. And Title 23?
Title 23 is just any type of billing purposes. It's just making sure that we have backup documentation for any type of billing when those are submitted, similar to other types of grants that you would get from the state.
Thank you. So, as far as some of the most frequent asked questions we've had so far, can a coalition apply? Yes, but we do want a designated lead agency. So that would be, we'll go through the actual application. That would be the primary sponsor or applicant, something like that. And then the coalition, like the next largest member of that coalition, could be the secondary sponsor. Break project into phases or apply for stages all at once. That is the applicant's choice, depending on what you think would be the best way to fund something between 500,000 and 17 million. Check for non-compliance determinations. There's the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. Or
I would mention on this particular requirement, and I think this is one of the questions we received in the questions in the initial announcement of this webinar. I think this particular requirement may be reviewed by the board of directors, depending on the types of issues that we're taking a look at in terms of inactive projects. And in terms of information available on that, the information isn't as clear, and some of the delays on other projects may be due to unforeseen circumstances in terms of contracting and not necessarily due to inactivity on the project. So the board of directors may take a look at this at the next board meeting. We will post any additional updates to this if that changes to the website, but I'm pretty sure it would be it would not be at detriment to any potential applications coming in.
thank you. So at this point, I'll get into the sample application. We ask that you download the NOFO from the NAAPME website, rename the file to include your applicant and project names, and I will show you that. Complete the PDF. Several fields are required. Include all required attachments, and we'll go through that list. If you have any additional attachments, some applicants have mentioned wanting to include more than what's required, and we'll accept those within reason and send all of that to that email address. Thanks to Garrett for posting the FAQs. If you could also chat the CDOT non-attainment enterprise email address, we'll include that in the chat at least once. Again, draft applications due February 25th, only for infrastructure projects, and final applications with all of that required info due by 5 p.m. Wednesday, April 30th. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen and go
Phil,
in.
if I could, just to be clear, it's draft applications are only due if you do not have in-house resources to do that engineering review for the feasibility of projects and need assistance from enterprise staff. So if you have that in-house capability, there is nothing required on February 15th. Only if you need that assistance are you required to submit something. However, we will accept applications at any time before the April 30th deadline.
Thank you for that.
I anticipate it may take a couple of weeks to do that to secure resources, but we would request that if you have in-house engineering or through a public works department or something else like that, that you would use that in order to do your review through a letter included in your admission packet. Only if your agency does not have any type of professional engineer to do that review, would we have that on there? We would anticipate having that ready before sometime towards the end of March, but it's uncertain at the time. It depends on the availability of resources. So we will get if there is such a request, we will provide. We'll be in contact with that and be able to provide a timeline once we see what comes in.
Thank you both for clarifying that. So now I'm going to stop sharing the presentation and go to the website and go through the application process.
So to the engineer, yes, for infrastructure projects, if it's a non-infrastructure project for a plan or anything else that's allowable under the CMAQ guidelines, as long as you're able to demonstrate that it would lead to potential ozone or GHG reductions. No, you do not require an engineering review for non-infrastructure projects.
Thank you both for that. So now Zoom is telling me I am on the NAAPME webpage, and if someone cannot see the NAAPME webpage, do let me know, but I will go through this now. So I'm sure you all know the NAAPME and CCTAP page, because that's where we told you about the webinar. I'm going to download the NOFO and application in English.
Hey, Phil, I don't know if it's following along anymore.
Thank you. I will stop and try again. I'm going to try this one. Do you see me zooming in on the NAAPME grant funding program page and scrolling?
The sheet, yes.
Excellent. I'm going to go through this very quickly to get to the application. All of this is the details of what we've already covered. Oh, and sorry, I meant to download it. I might have to stop sharing again.
While you're downloading, I do want to answer the question in chat. Do you support software solutions to reduce carbon emissions, air pollution through promoting alternative transportation modes with transportation benefit programs or monetary incentives? I think that that particular item, I think, would generally fit into the guidelines. I don't think there's anything mentioned specifically on there, but as long as the project has the ability to show a quantifiable benefit, I think that can be taken into consideration and should be eligible. There are some types of projects in the CMAQ guidance that are similar to that. But I would take a look at the CMAQ guidance, which is in the application in order to determine eligibility, and that will be go through it in detail on all types of eligible projects.
Thank you. Good catch. I may have to stop and reshare again, but do you see me moving my Chrome downloads window around?
I see you in your download history.
Oh, thank you. Let's see if this works. Okay, how about my, there we go. That's what I wanted to show. So I downloaded the NOFO. I'm going to leave NAAPME CCTAP. I'm going to make as generic as I can. Town of Colorado, clean transportation. Rename it that. That's how we know it's from you for this project. And now I'm going to open with Adobe Acrobat. Do you see me maximizing this in Acrobat?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is the part where I'm going to blow through the NOFO part because we've already covered this, but the details are there with plenty of links to everything we've already shared. There's the appendices. Here we are. So this is the actual application we want to get. So I'll just do town of Colorado with all the details. And then me. And again, if you're a coalition, the lead agency should be this primary project manager, and then any other secondary project contact you want to include. The primary info is required, the secondary is not. Procurement. Describe it however you want. That helps us understand your process. But I just put that in there for the sake of filling a required field. Meet eligibility criteria. This is the statute that enabled the non-attainment enterprise, NAAPME. Yes. Good standing with the Secretary of State. Yes. Project overview. Clean transportation project. Now, we've been mentioning the CMAQ guidance that I trust you have a link to in the chat. We copied this list straight from the CMAQ guidance of what is an eligible product category. And since today is Winter Bike to Work Day all around the world, this is going to be for a bike ped facility. Let's say bike ped lane from Main Street, bike ped lane from 1st to 10th Avenue. And you can include as much more detail as you want, whether you want latitude, longitude, or things like that. Feel free to put that in there so we know exactly where this project would be. The ownership is the town of Colorado. Describe any review. Let's say town of Colorado has its own PE and they okayed it. Does it encroach on a CDOT right of way or roadway? No. Since we said no here, this special use permit is not applicable. It is an infrastructure project. It will meet ADA standards. That's a link to the ADA site. Yes. And I'll just say again, separated bike ped path along Main Street. 1st to 10th. And you include up to 2 paragraphs. I forget what number of thousands of characters I allowed in here, but there is a limit, but please provide as much detail as you can up to that limit. Is this part of a larger project? Say no. Then we don't need to add anything here. So I'm going to be ultra basic with this. This first line of deliverables is required. I'll say concrete. You can include up to 10 deliverables. And then with costs, we'll say there. Here I'll say labor for a PM for really easy math. $100 an hour at 1,000 hours. I thought that was supposed to go to auto compute. And I'll switch to 900 hours there. And again, I'm doing this just for the sake of getting through the required fields. And say 100,000 for the project manager. It does auto compute that the combined amount of the project is $100,000 or $1 million. Here, these 2 fields are required. This project request 800,000 from NAAPME CCTAP. Provide 20% match. $1 million total. Any CDOT granted federal funds? Let's say no, so we can skip that. Readiness, planned, designed, permitted, and ready. But again, as much detail as you can include up to the maximum number of characters, and with a broad project timeline by 2026, something like that. So here's where we get into what we want for emissions reductions. With the CMAQ emissions calculator toolkit, and there's a link to it from the in the NOFO. The emissions precursors would include carbon monoxide, and let's just very simply say 1 kilogram a day reduction thanks to this bike ped path. Oxides of nitrogen and volatile organic compounds, the 3 main ozone precursors. And we'll also want to see as an attachment your work in the emissions calculator toolkit, or whatever tool you use to get your emission reductions. Include that as an attachment to this application. The next most important thing for this project is is this project in, or does it support a disproportionately impacted community? Here are the links to EnviroScreen, produced by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, that maps out the entire state with different layers of income restrictions or not primary English speaking residents, people of color, over 65. There are a variety of different things to show that, yes, this is a disproportionately impacted community. And not only that it's in a DI community, but how it supports and benefits disadvantaged populations. No more walking, biking on street. The board placed a high emphasis on how much outreach was done to engage this community. Several public meetings. So please provide details about how you reached out to these communities. To what degree would this project improve economic opportunities in this community? So more livable Main Street, sidewalk cafes, maybe, things like that. So please add all of that about your how this project will help DI communities. And then the NAAPME funding focus areas. This link here goes to our 10-year plan, and there are 3 funding focus areas. And the first one that I remember off the top of my head, sustainably reduced traffic congestion. Sustainably. And then one of the example bullets in there was new bike ped. There. So then we're on to project integration. Let's say this is already in the town of Colorado long range transportation plan. And then on to safety, separate bike ped. Connectivity. Connects with Main and intersecting streets, transit stops. Think of all the different ways this project can support connectivity. And then community support. Very successful public meetings, surveys, letters of support, say from the mayor, the town council, things like that. All of that would help with community support. Here's where we get to the attachments. You include a relevant map, concept design if it's already completed, current state of photographs of the current state of the project site, say Main Street without a separate bike ped. The emissions reduction estimates, whether you use CMAQ or MOVES or whatever tool, gives kilograms per day emissions reductions from a project. And then if there is no documented connection to another plan, then the letters of support or public involvement documentation. Screenshot of EnviroScreen results. And then there's the link to the tool. And then there's the attestation. I will sign this. A sign is like a save as in Acrobat. Save as, signed, replace, yes. There we go. And then include all this application and all of those attachments in an email to this address that I think Garrett already put in the chat. And I will stop sharing here and go back to the presentation.
Bill, I think this would be a good time to answer a couple of questions that were in chat.
Please.
So I think we had to answer this question, is project design work considered eligible? It is. I think you probably in your application want to, of course, show where it would lead to potential reductions once the project is implemented, and when the timeline when the project is implemented for to allow for the board to consider. The board of directors for the NAAPME enterprise is the ultimate committee that decides where the applications will go. The other question that came up, and I may need some clarification, just FYI, the link on this page is old. I'm not sure if you were referring to the page on here that was put into chat or on the NAAPME NOFO application. We'll note that the CMAQ interim guidance was just published in November, so it should be up to date from the link there. The application itself may need, if it has an old link on that, we'll make sure to update that, but you shouldn't need to redo the application if it has an old update, but please let me know.
Thank you for catching that.
Okay, page 18 on the NOFO application. Appreciate that update, and we'll make sure that we'll have that in the facts and in the on the website and re-upload the item that goes from there. What you'll find on the differences from what was originally on the old link and what was changed in 2024 is the addition of new project types. Generally, there wasn't any major restrictions or things that are not going to be eligible. So, and then our CO2 estimates required are just NOx and VOC okay. Again, NOx and VOCs are okay. If you want to provide CO and PM, which usually comes from the CMAQ tools, that's fine. Or even CO2e, unless you are relying solely on GHG reduction levels to meet the emissions requirement, which is allowable under statute, then CO2e estimates would be required as well. So if there is any confusion on that, please reach out. We're happy to answer any questions.
Great, good catch. I didn't see those because I was sharing the other screen. I am meaning to be back to share my presentations sample application. Let me know if you do not see that. I am now scrolling to NAAPME CCTAP resources. So again, like I said, this NOFO is in English and Spanish, and I thought I had updated all of those links to the CMAQ guidance, but thanks for catching that one in the application. Our NAAPME 10-year plan is very informative about why this enterprise was formed and what we're looking for as far as what to fund from it. And then I'm pretty sure this CMAQ interim guidance is for the new guidance. And I will click it and put it in the chat myself. So that is the latest CMAQ guidance right there. So that's the end of our formal presentation. And thank you to those who submitted a question along with your application. I think we may have already answered a couple of them, but I'm going to go through those questions once I find them.
Bill, I have those pulled up and it can help read off some of those questions while you're looking for it as well.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
So do you provide funding for software solutions? I think we've answered this question previously, but again, generally it's I think we would probably want to have that question and take a look at it. There is not allowable under the CMAQ guidance. And there's some similar guidance that allows that, but we would probably want to take a look at that potential application to see where it is and make a determination. Can we use this grant to supplement a project with existing grant funding but is short of estimated construction budget? The answer is yes, absolutely. With the stipulation that if the 20% match cannot come from NAAPME funding, But since no NAAPME funding has gone out so far, I don't think that will be an issue for any applicants. Is design project work eligible? We just answered that. Yes, it is. I think what the board would like to see is projects in the near future, not within the next year, and within several years of implementation, that the project is actually going to be implemented. And please note that in your application. Will projects that mostly closely adhere to CMAQ guidelines be scored higher? The scoring criteria is labeled within the application, within the application, the scoring guidelines on how we would be scored. I think the two most important pieces, of course, is the support for disproportionately impacted communities and how it can support economic benefits to those communities, and what the potential ozone and GHG impacts of your project will be as reported through the tools. We'll move on to the next question. How does CDOT write an IGA with an MPO TPR? That's an interesting question. That is something that we can have a longer conversation on. It's fairly complicated, but there are processes already in place with previous grant applications that would happen, and it would be from the non-attainment enterprise and not CDOT. I just wanted to make that clear. And what is considered FHWA inactive? It is 12 months, but like I mentioned, the board of directors is potentially looking at a potential change in those. In that requirement due to some of the issues with that as well. I think the next one is previously addressed eligibility requirements for applying. Eligible project sponsors are in good standing with the Secretary of State and the federal inactive list. Again, because of some of the difficulties with some of this information and where there may be inactive projects due to no fault from the agency, I think the board of directors will be revisiting that, and the requirements for that will be softened, and we will post information later on. But it should not. It should not be at a detriment of any applicants. And then the last question that we had previously is: it's acceptable to submit multiple applications? If you mean by multiple applications from an individual agency, yes, it is acceptable.
Thank you, Darius. I see 2 new questions in the chat.
Just following up on the software question, should we write a draft application to discuss with you or check on CMAQ requirements? I would recommend checking on the CMAQ requirements in the CMAQ guidance, which can be found on the web pages that we put into the chat. And we're happy to have a follow-up to see ahead of putting in a draft application for discuss. From a software perspective, I don't think it would require the engineering review. That's for infrastructure only projects. This would be a non-infrastructure project. And then if the project's on CDOT right away and a special use permit is required, do we need to have that submitted prior to the submission of the grant? I don't think so. I think it would be a requirement under the local agency process with CDOT, and I encourage you to work with your local CDOT office and which CDOT region that your projects in order to determine those requirements if need be, because those would be separate to be working on those. Either Region 1, which would be the Denver metro area, or Region 4, which would be the North Front Range and Upper Front Range areas.
Thank you, Darius. One other question that I know is going to be added to the updated FAQs is the changes at the federal level do not affect NAAPME at all. NAAPME is 100% funded by the state of Colorado. And sure, it draws on the CMAQ project guidance, but there is no federal funding involved. And now that we've made it through all of those questions that you submitted, please raise your hand and ask any other questions that may have come up since. And if you don't want to talk, you can keep chatting them.
I should also mention that we are, if you're on.
Are you still on, Darius?
Apologies, just had some background noise. If you have any questions on here, or if there's some questions that you like more clarification, you're more than welcome to submit a question through the NAAPME email address. We'll post that again. And we're able to do a written response as well after the meeting. So we still do have plenty of time in order to get a lot of these questions answered from folks.
Hi,
Thank you, Rita.
Darius and Phil. This is Lee. I just wanted to pose a question clarifying. Darius, you'd mentioned that if a project was proposed that had a design phase, that you felt that the board, upon review, would like to see an implementation piece sooner rather than later. Could that take the form of a demonstration project, or do you think they're looking more for full implementation within that 5-year grant period?
I think they're probably looking for at least going to construction in the 5-year grant period. I'm speculating at this point, but based on some of the conversations on the board, they would like these funds to go to items that truly make an impact. We want to make sure that it's within reason, and we know that some infrastructure projects take longer than that. But I think being able to demonstrate a timeline and expected completion of the project would be helpful in your application.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Either raise your hand or chat them, or just unmute and start asking. Okay. It looks like we're done here. So thanks again very much to all of you. We look forward to your applications. And please do email the enterprise for any other questions you might think of between now and the application deadlines. And we'll keep updating the website. A recording of this webinar will be on the website planned for by the end of next week. And yes, thank you again. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will have an updated version of the NOFO based on that quick item that was mentioned. So make sure that CMAQ guidance website is updated in the NOFO itself, and we'll post it on the website. So appreciate Lisa for pointing that out to us.
Great. Lots of thumbs up. Thank you, Darius. And thank you again, everyone. Take care.
Bye, Phil. Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, Dee.
Bye-bye, Darius. Thank you.